Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Good evening. My, did we just have an exciting night? Or what? I was all ready with an entire new show tonight here at the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. And then I'd completely forgotten about one very important thing. Donald Trump and his congressional address. I wish I had the full thing at this point to listen to. I think I'm going to do that on Thursday. So I'm going to have to shift just a few things tonight. Oh, and we have a special guest. Patrick Dollard from patrickdollard.com is going to come in and speak to us. And as anyone who knows Pat Dollard realizes, he's very, very shy. So I'm going to have to do my level best to try to see if I can coax some honest answers out of him. Without further ado, let's go.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Into the World Trade Center in New York.
Trying to reconcile how Benghazi was not safe enough for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to go, but it was safe enough to leave a below-spec facility for our diplomats to stay in.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is Tuesday, February 28th, year of our Lord 2017. Belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account.
I'm sure you did.
Allowed.
And it's great to see you back. So tonight, Flack Bait is going to be a bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them, and the smoking lamp is indeed lighted.
The State Department did not automatically save all departmental emails of February.
We don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world.
All that we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. So tonight, as I indicated, I bigfooted my own self. Patrick Dollard is going to be on at the bottom of the hour. On the far left coast, that's 8:30. At the far right coast, that's 11:30. For those of you in Bolivia, that's 10:25 and 32 seconds. So tonight, we have Patrick Dollard at the bottom of the hour. We're going to ask ourselves,
government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Isn't that the truth? And so, Trump's joint address to Congress. Did heads explode or what? Well, perhaps they did. Perhaps there were some people that were just a tad bit upset. People that didn't look as though they were extremely pleased to be there. He said a few things that I happened to agree with quite a bit. And so I was looking on Twitter recently. And you should see the things that are on Twitter about his address itself.
Of our nation's path toward civil rights and the work that still remains to be done. We are a country that stands united in condemning hate and evil in all of its very ugly forms.
And isn't that odd? Isn't that what the left says, that Trump doesn't do enough? He doesn't condemn. Donald Trump, President Trump. Isn't that great? I like to say that. Those two words together. I enjoy it. President Trump. But haven't people said that President Trump doesn't disavow enough, doesn't disregard enough, doesn't hold people at arm's length enough, doesn't say that you should not support these things? He just did in his statement to Congress. You batshit crazy Democrats.
A new national pride is sweeping across our nation, and a new surge of optimism is placing impossible dreams firmly within our grasp. America must put its own citizens first, because only then can we truly make America great again.
I haven't listened to this cut, but one of the most important things that I said, that I heard him say as I was driving over to the studio tonight, is he said, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the President of the world. Bingo! Thank you very much. That's exactly what I've been wanting a president to say for quite some time, and I heard it tonight.
To any in Congress who do not believe we should enforce our laws, I would ask you this one question. What would you say to the American family that loses their jobs, their income, or their loved one? We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism.
Stop. Thank you. Thank you. A president that can say radical Islam terror. It's not radical Catholic terror. It's not radical Eritrean terror. It's not radical Shinto terror. It's radical Islamic terror.
The vast majority of individuals convicted of terrorism and terrorism-related offenses since 9/11 came here from outside of our country.
But wait, that's not what our court said. That's not what that stupid damn judge up in Washington said. He said there were no incidents whatsoever. He was a lying sack of shite.
Those given the high honor of admission to the United States should support this country and love its people and its values. My economic team is developing historic tax reform that will reduce the tax rate on our companies so they can compete and thrive anywhere and with anyone. I believe that real and positive immigration reform is possible as long as we focus on the following goals: to improve jobs and wages for Americans, to strengthen our nation's security, and to restore respect for our laws.
If we are not a nation of laws, what are we? When the prior president, Barack Hussein Obama, deigned in his great munificence what laws we were going to obey and what laws we were not going to obey, he set a terrible precedent. And now states, cities, counties are deciding what laws they're going to obey as well. What if you and I, ladies and gentlemen, the commoners, the serfs, the proles, the groundlings, the terrible unwashed, what if we arbitrarily decided one day that we were not just like states now, cities now, counties now? What if we decided that we were going to pick and choose a particular law and not abide by it, what do you think would happen to us?
I am calling on all Democrats and Republicans in Congress to work with us to save Americans from this imploding Obamacare disaster. But it must be the plan they want, not the plan forced on them by our government. The time has come to give Americans the freedom to purchase health insurance across state lines. Every problem can be solved, and every hurting family can find healing and hope.
I've always been an advocate of this in terms of problems. There isn't any problem on the surface of the planet that can't be solved by one of two things: vodka or a throat punch.
Our citizens deserve this, and so much more. So why not join forces and finally get the job done and get it done right? Education is the civil rights issue of our time. I am calling upon members of both parties to pass an education bill that funds school choice for disadvantaged youth, including millions of African American and Latino children.
That can't succeed. The NRA is, trust me, they are sharpening their knives right now, sending out emails and messages to all of their members of the NRA. Donald Trump and his programs cannot afford to succeed. Because if Donald Trump actually gets into the urban areas of this country, if he gets into Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, New York, South Central Los Angeles, Atlanta, if he gets into these large urban cities and American blacks suddenly begin to acquire jobs, they suddenly begin to acquire an education because they have school choice, that cannot stand. The NRA will not let it stand. The Democrats will not let it stand. And the unions will not let it stand, because if he succeeds, they fail. And everything they stand for fails as well.
I am sending Congress a budget that rebuilds the military, eliminates the defense sequester, and calls for one of the largest increases in national defense spending in American history.
That's wonderful, because now instead of a 500-ship blue water Navy as we had under Ronald Reagan when he was president, now we have an Army, an Air Force that is back to 1940 levels, and in some cases, levels right around the time of the Depression in 1929. That's obscene. When Air Force pilots have to cannibalize other F-16 jets because they can't find the parts, they can't acquire the parts because they don't have the budget to make the jets fly. That's reprehensible, and that's exactly what Barack Hussein Obama engendered and created over the past 8 years.
We are blessed to be joined tonight by Corinne Owens, the widow of U.S. Navy Special Operator, Senior Chief William Ryan Owens. I just spoke to our great General Mattis.
An aside, if you happen to watch the speech, right after he made the announcement about Owens, there was applause in the chamber for 2 minutes straight in honor of that man.
Just now, who reconfirmed that, and I quote, Ryan was a part of a highly successful raid that generated large amounts of vital intelligence. America is friends today with former enemies. Some of our closest allies decades ago fought on the opposite side of these terrible, terrible wars. I am asking everyone watching tonight to seize this moment, believe in yourselves, believe in your future, and believe once more in America. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States.
So there you have it. People were saying that President Trump couldn't make a positive speech if his life depended on it. Oddly enough, that sounded like a positive speech to me. Isn't that bizarre? And while you were watching, if you happen to be watching live, and I'm going to go over the speech in its full detail this coming Thursday on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon's Aftermath, the Aftermath, which is all the shite that I couldn't fit into this show because of time constraints, etc. I'm going to play that entire speech, and we're going to go over and analyze it bit by bit, because rather than just this one particular piece here, there was an amazing amount of detail that people said, President Trump, he can't provide detail. Oddly enough, guess what? That's exactly what he provided. So, did people want him to win? What did people want him to do? They didn't want him to win. They don't want him to be successful. So, as you were looking at this particular speech, were you watching Nancy Pelosi? So, here we go. As President Donald Trump, I really enjoy saying that, hailed the creation of private sector jobs by American companies. Pause just for a second. In the weeks before his inauguration and the few weeks since, he has gotten American businesses to commit to $76+ billion in investments in the United States. Did we ever see anything like that from Barack Hussein Obama? I don't believe we did. So, many in Congress cheered tonight. Were you watching Nancy Pelosi? She wasn't. So, in the speech, he runs down a list of companies that announced investments, just as I indicated, job additions in the past several weeks. And his quote was, "Since my election, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, General Motors, Spring, SoftBank, Lockheed, Intel, Walmart, and many others have announced that they will invest billions and billions of dollars," and he's not lying, "in the United States and create tens of thousands of new American jobs." So, let's listen just for a second, and I wish you could see this.
It's been a little over a month since my inauguration, and I want to take this moment to update the nation on the progress I've made in keeping those promises. Since my election, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, General Motors, Sprint, SoftBank, Lockheed, Intel, Walmart, and many others have announced that they will invest billions and billions of dollars in the United States.
Right now, at this point, the camera is on Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence behind to the left, and Speaker Paul Ryan to the right.
And will create tens of thousands of new American jobs.
Pence stands up, so does Speaker Ryan. The camera pans the audience. The rest of the audience is clapping and applauding. And there is Nancy Pelosi looking as though, does anyone remember the movie Brazil? And that particular elder lady that was in Brazil who got her face stretched on pins. Nancy Pelosi reminds me specifically of that actress out of that movie. She looks like Skeletor. And so what did she did? She remained in a seat with a crappy look on her face. Imagine that. Imagine that. Not shocking at all whatsoever. Anyway, tonight, in about another 10 minutes or so, we're going to have Patrick Dollard calling in, and I'm going to be speaking to him about any number of things. Up until that point, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if any of you saw or heard of this, but if you remember Jorge Ramos, he's quantified as the senior anchor on Univision, which is a Mexican radio station. I don't say Hispanic, it's Mexican. Mexicans are from Mexico. That's why they're called Mexicans. Anyway, he made a statement recently, and it went something like this, as he spoke it, of course, in Spanish. The racist Jorge Ramos, in my opinion, he is a clear and unadulterated racist, said America is our country, meaning Mexico's. Univision's senior journalist, Jorge Ramos, said that the United States is their country, meaning Mexico, not ours, meaning the rest of America. Univision senior anchor Jorge Ramos, this is from an article from Breitbart by Katie McHugh, declared on Friday that the United States belongs to Latino migrants, emphatically stating to a Spanish-speaking audience that it is our country, not theirs. Ramos took an unusual tack, pivoting from talk of diversity and togetherness into boasts of conquest, like the background of, say, Mecca, for example, and some other Mexican organizations. Mass immigration, particularly illegal immigration, was, it's as far as he's concerned, it was a fait accompli. It's going to happen. There's nothing the U.S. can do about it, and they must accept that America is not their country and that illegal aliens, particularly Latinos, meaning Mexicans, are not going to leave. And he says, but you know what? This is also our country. Let me repeat this. Our country, not theirs. And again I say, does this not to you bespeak of nothing but racism? It certainly does to me. I can think of no other meaning for this. We are not going to leave. We're nearly 60 million Latinos in the United States, he continued, and thanks to us, the United States eats, grows, and as we've seen today, sings and dances. Well, singing and dancing is certainly important. Apparently, we need more immigrants, more illegals to come in and sing and dance. And America eats behind Latinos and Mexicans? Oh, really? Do you know that those jobs that are menial in nature, that allegedly the people that are promoting illegal Mexicans into the United States, those jobs are being replaced. Entry-level jobs are being replaced. Jobs in the fields are being replaced by machines that shake trees so fruit falls on the ground and then can be gathered by another machine. You realize, for example, that Burger King recently made a commitment because of the $15 minimum wage. They're going to have thousands, plural, of kiosks. Excuse me, it's Wendy's, not Burger King. Wendy's is going to have thousands of ordering kiosks in their stores. It's beginning back east. It'll soon be here. In some stores, you can already acquire soft drinks through these machines. What is that a response to? That's a response to the $15 minimum wage by people that bring no skills to a job and do nothing but essentially push the cheeseburger icon on a screen. As you all well know, that takes much, much training. So the jobs that he's claiming that only Mexicans will do, those jobs, entry-level, unskilled jobs, are going away. Now, how many rocket scientists do you think are coming in from Mexico? How many brain surgeons do you think are coming in from Mexico? My guess would be not really all that many. So Jorge Ramos continues. So when they attack us, we already know what we're going to do. We're not going to sit down, we will not shut up, and we will not leave. That's exactly what we're going to do. So, you ever hear of the word Hispandering? What that means is pandering to Hispanics. So I wrote, if you remember, there was a debate that was hosted by Jorge Ramos from Univision. The moderators, for example, of the 8th Democrat debates were, in my opinion, the racist Jorge Ramos and another woman by the name of Maria Elena Salinas. And there was a token female Caucasoid on the panel as well, just to kind of fill things out, by the name of Karen Tumulty of the Washington Post. Mostly she remained silent in that. When those two clear, in my opinion, racists sat at a moderator's panel and pushed agendas specific to only one race, Hispanics, Mexicans, and the name of La Raza, by the way, means the race, which advocates Reconquista, even escapes their lips. I know they're racists. La Raza means the race. Not just any race, but the race, the superior race, meaning Mexico. Well, like I say, let's do the reversal theory, shall we? And that's this. Reverse it. Imagine that there was a Caucasoid channel sponsoring the GOP debates, and moderators were asking what the candidates could do just for whites. So, in BZ's little funny world, and it can be funny at times, not funny haha, but funny very bizarre, why do I call them racist? I say in response, that's extremely easy to answer. And this is my philosophy. Until everyone is equal, no one is equal. That's not a particularly difficult concept to grok, I would expect. It's like this. It's a conundrum that early in my career in law enforcement, I had to deal with. I had to make a decision as to how I was going to handle everyone that I came across. And that was this. Either everyone that I come in contact matters, from the people with the highest incomes possible. And in my particular district that I was primarily enforced with keeping safe, I had both huge polar opposite ends and neighborhoods. I had a very rich neighborhood near the American River where people were making easily six-figure, occasionally seven-figure incomes. They deserve service. Over in the western area of my district, where I policed, were some of the most poor people I ever encountered. On the northern border of my district, along Auburn Boulevard, there were the homeless people and the people that could barely afford to be in motel rooms, with 2, 3, 4 children, the poorest of the poor. And they had problems, and they would call the cops. Did they not deserve the same quality of service that people near the American River in the rich section did? And the answer is that. So I had to come to that conclusion very early in my career. In politics, in the world, it's like this. Either everyone is equal or no one is equal. It translated into my world of copdom at the time. Either everyone matters or no one matters. Because I was not going to go out and pick and choose. The people that were poor had every right to expect excellent law enforcement service, the best that I could give in the short time that I was allowed to handle their calls, because I couldn't live their lives for them, of course, nor could my trainees or other law enforcement officers that respond to the various calls for service. So I had a limited time in which to attempt to do my best to solve the problems that were extant. They deserve the exact same quality of service as the people down near the American River did as well. Because if I didn't do that, where was the actual service in any law enforcement venue? People mostly come across cops in two fashions. Number one, over the telephone when they first call. So courtesy and respect starts there. And then the second venue that people see is when a cop actually shows up at your doorstep. And people expect quality service and dedication in that venue too. All the rest of the stuff sort of is superfluous. Because when people call, They're not calling because they're having a grand day. They're calling because they have a problem. They've been cut. They've been stabbed. They've been hit. They've been knifed. They were in an automobile accident. Someone is seriously injured, perhaps even murdered. And murders and all those crimes occur on both sides of the economic scale. So again, to you racist fuck, Jorge Ramos, either everyone is equal or no one is equal. Either every person matters or no one matters. So when you hear me use the R word, and I don't care to bandy it about very much, because it doesn't please me to do so, and I use it very sparingly, but only to those people that I think deserve it, Jorge Ramos, you're an unmitigated, in my loving opinion, and God knows I love you, Jorge, you racist. So tell you what, it's the bottom of the hour, and not too terribly far from now, we're going to have Patrick Dollard call in. Let's have a break, and let's see what happens, shall we? This could potentially be kind of interesting. So please, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.com.
One moment, Patrick. We'll be on after this. Patrick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, we'll be on right after this.
Okay, now.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arthur on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean. Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is the bottom of the hour. We have Mr. Patrick Dollard on the air, and tonight we have the honor of speaking to Patrick Dollard, a man who is rather unique, eclectic, and iconoclast, shall we say. If there's one thing that became quite evident to me in my research of Patrick Dollard, it's that he's led an adventurous life on just about every level imaginable. It's also certain that Patrick Dollard, in my opinion, is not shy in terms of his opinions on any number of subjects, and he doesn't quite have to be coaxed out of his shell, I don't believe, to tell them. So, Wikipedia, I went to Wikipedia, I don't know why I just decided to go there, describes Pat Dollard as an American documentary filmmaker, a Hollywood talent agent, a manager, and a producer mostly known for building the career of director Steven Soderbergh. So I also found out that Mr. Dollard has been a conservative since the mid to late 90s. He's been just about anything you can possibly think of. A blogger, a pundit, a writer, a host of his own radio show, which is why I thank him for coming on here now, a producer of his own documentary called Young Americans, which illustrates his 7-month stay in Iraq with U.S. Marines. Interesting point, Pat Dollard was himself almost killed in Iraq while shooting that documentary when in February of 2006, the Hummer in which he was riding with a U.S. Marine element was hit with a roadside IED. The resulting explosion, unfortunately, killed the Marine riding next to Patrick Dollard in the back seat, as well as the Marine in the front passenger seat. He himself acquired a leg injury from that particular event, and in the process of spooking around the internet, this is going to be grand. You're going to appreciate this. In the process of peeking around the internet, I came across this paragraph which caught my attention from the Washington Post in 2007, and it went something like this. This was the intro to a particular piece about Pat Dollard. After his fourth wife left him because she got upset with his hobbies, which included cocaine and hookers, Hollywood agent-producer Pat Dollard decided to get his head together by flying to Iraq, out with the Marines, and fight insurgents and film pro-war documentary that would make him the Michael Moore of the right. The article goes on to say a few weeks later, he sent his Hollywood pals a photo of himself with a mohawk haircut, a machine gun, and the word die shaved into his chest hair. After that, things started to get weird. Patrick Dollard, welcome to the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. That's one of... God, if I die, I hope someone writes a paragraph like that about me. How can I top that? That's wonderful.
I don't know. I don't know, but I hope to. As good as that was, I hope there's a lot more that they end up writing in the future, too.
I read that, and when I got through reading it, I had to read this a couple of times because the first couple of times I read that, at the end, I was actually crying. There were tears rolling down my face, and I've gotten over it now so that I can address you properly. But like I say, oh my God, if only one would only write something like that about me in terms of an epitaph. So, welcome.
Yeah, you have plenty of time. You're never too old. I mean, go out there and just get it done, and they'll write all kinds of stuff.
Welcome to the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I thank you ever so kindly for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invitation.
It's like you've done damn near everything that I can possibly think of in the world.
Yeah, it's been pretty weird. I mean, I grew up not from a wealthy Hollywood family at all. We were on food stamps when I was a kid. Just in the suburbs, and I ended up being a big Hollywood agent. And I ended up being a correspondent in the Iraq War, and then I ended up being a bad boy in the conservative movement. It's been had a lot of fun in Hollywood. I somewhat referenced in the Washington Post article. It's been a wild and unusual time, but it was all driven by passions, things that were important to me, basically. Some of which was just having fun at times.
But I'll tell you what, if there is one thing that I think can be said about you is throughout your life, I wager you've probably had an assload of fun.
I have. I can't deny that. It's true.
People can find you at patrickdollard.com.
It's patdollard.com.
Oh, I'm sorry, patdollard.com.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the website. And on Twitter at patdollard, I have a very, very lively Twitter page. And on Gab, it's the same thing. It's also at patdollard. Gab is anybody listening doesn't know, Gab is the new alternative to Twitter.
Yes.
It's at the moment it was started by right-wingers, basically. So it tends to have a primarily sort of conservative right-wing membership right now. But its biggest feature, and that should change over time, and its biggest feature really is, well, it's got 300 characters for one thing, so more than twice as much as you could say on Twitter in a burst. But its biggest thing is that they will not censor anything, other than like direct threats to like kill or hurt somebody.
Right.
As long as you don't say, I'm going to go kill this guy, or I'm going to go fucking, something to that effect, you can say whatever you want about anybody, anything, any group, anything. And it's very refreshing. It's very interesting.
Well, that's exactly why the First Amendment was created. The First Amendment, again, in my opinion, but I think it's buttressed by many other people, exists not for pablum speech. The First Amendment exists for challenging speech, period.
I think it exists for saying what's on your mind, regardless of who it offends. We have a lot of conflict in society, so a lot of people we have bad things to say about a lot of other people, whether it's individuals, whether it's groups who are engaged in a certain activity at the time. There are a lot of things that are very important that people have to say that are about conflict and criticism and attack. And so all of those things obviously lend themselves to offense, to people being offended. But, what's the point of having conversations if half of it, which is, half of what people really have to say in this world are complaints, critiques? You know what I'm saying? So if all that stuff is suddenly banned, what is speech anymore? Other than, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And speech then is reduced to just hush-hush private stuff when, you know what I mean? When you're alone with friends or family or something.
No,
it's absurd.
It is absurd. Yeah. Life is a challenge. Life exists to teach you lessons, and you learn these lessons by interacting with people and discussing and learning what it is that they think, how they act. You don't learn anything from life when you have to couch everything that you say and consider, well, will I offend that particular person? And you don't live your life like that, and that's one of the reasons that I admire you. You've been under a shitload of criticism over the years, but if there's one thing that I learned is you say exactly what you think. And as opposed to all the other arseholes in D.C., you never know what they're thinking, but I have a pretty good idea what you're thinking. And I appreciate honesty.
There you go. Well, thanks, sir. I appreciate that.
I appreciate
a lot of that was done on purpose. I like to push the boundaries of language and what can be said. You know what I mean? It's slowly breaking down doors. So a lot of those things that I push, I do because if you keep sort of doing it and repeating it, you break down the sort of like limitations of normal discourse, for one thing. And another thing that I'll say about my controversial outspokenness is the fact that what has happened is everybody is catching up with it. I don't necessarily mean everybody, but in terms of the conservative movement, the stuff that I was saying 2 or 3, 4 years ago, which was considered just highly controversial. And
it was
you can't talk like
heinous.
this. You can't do that. It's now mainstream. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
a lot of the stuff that Trump is saying, a lot of things that you just could not say before, because conservatives were so just terrified of media and criticism, and you would have like there were pretty well known people on Twitter who would take it upon themselves to be the conservatives, who would take it upon themselves to be the speech police. And somebody would say something, they would try to lead a charge for people to vilify them. Michelle Malkin used to do that. She would attack Ann Coulter. She said something that she thought was out of line. It got to be ridiculous. We had this own sort of police force inside the conservative movement, just trying to crush and squash any speech that they felt was just far too controversial. And the reality is now, as I said, all that stuff, which was verboten before, is now pretty much most of the stuff that everybody's talking about.
Yes, and like I said, that's why I admire you. I admire you I admire anyone that embodies these two very specific, now not really frequently encountered qualities. Like I said, honesty. I know who you are and what you think, and clarity. You're not trying to obscure anything. Honesty and clarity. My God, do we need more of that?
Well, I mean, what are we dealing with if we're not dealing with the truth?
No, exactly.
We're wasting our time. We're completely just wasting our time. I have a limited time on this earth. I have a limited time to make change, to work on things, to find things to fix, to help change those things. And I'm not interested in spending that time on things that are not real. They're not true. They're problems, wasting and trying to fix problems that don't really matter, instead of dealing with the problems that really matter, just because nobody wants to deal with them because you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to talk about them. And like that, it's just, I don't know, it just becomes a ridiculous waste of time if we're going to have pretend conversations because we can't really say what's going on.
That's it.
What I mean? And I think,
that's it.
Yeah, I think for a long time in the conservative movement, people were willing to not deal with broken things and with genuine problems because they were too controversial. And if the conservatives felt like that was fine, we could just get away with that for the longest time. It's not really presenting enough of a problem for us to freak out about it. So all that stuff began to catch up with us. Those problems began to become too real to ignore anymore. Immigration and race relations are a big couple of those.
That's exactly correct. If you cannot even name a problem, if you cannot even name, for example, Barack Obama, Islamic terror, how the hell can you ever expect to solve the problem? When you can't say that, for example, the Chicago black community has one hell of a problem that it appears that Donald Trump is actually trying to address. When you can't point your finger at a problem, you're not going to solve it.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. You know what I mean? And it's a slow evolution with a lot of this stuff. I mean, people forget. I mean, I remember back in, when I first got into blogging the internet when I got back from Iraq in 2006, it was still new to even sort of, criticize Muslims and sort of speak the truth about what was going on and the darker things about the religion and the darker things about how they would think as a group and all that sort of stuff. Where even if you were conservative back in the day, especially right after, before and after September 11th, you were vilified as a racist and a xenophobe and an Islamophobe if you were, criticizing Muslims in too significant or direct of a way. It wasn't just the other side. We had that problem on this side, and we barely can't even remember those days. I mean, you can't find a conservative who's not willing to just rip Muslims and Islam a new asshole for what they've done. It's commonplace, but it didn't always used to be.
No.
You know what I mean? And
yes.
It's sort of like trying to identify some of these problems and begin to move the ball along in terms of the conversation is a lot of what I try to do. And that's a lot of the reasons why I get attacked and, I'm so controversial.
Two of the finest books I ever read about the Middle East version of Islam are The Closed Circle by David Price Jones, and another one was The Strong Horse by Lee Smith. And essentially what it says is this: Muslims in the Middle East have an axiom: me against my brother, me and my brother against my cousin, me and my brother and my cousin against the tribe, me and my brother and my cousin and the tribe against the outsider. That's the nature of Middle Eastern Islam. If you can't name a problem, how do you fight it? Okay, we're talking to Patrick Dollard. And Patrick, I believe you've said that you can hang on for about an hour, or do you have to leave?
I'm good. I'm good until about 10:30. It's fine.
Okay, all right. So I have a lot of questions for you, if you don't mind, because your life to me has been absolutely fascinating. You are, in fact, an iconoclast. You're eclectic. You've done damn near everything. But I tend to look at people's lives, and I like to ask them in interviews. I've had 3 what I call major pivotal points in my life. So my question to you is, I suspect I know what at least one of your pivotal points in your life was in 2006 when you almost got your lungs blown out by an IED sitting in a Hummer. But were there other pivotal points in your life where just something happened and you had an epiphany and things changed?
Well, I'd say probably 1996, which is when I became a conservative. I had a child, and I think that was really the catalyst for looking at everything just differently and sort of realizing that, what the world was going to be that she was going to grow up in mattered. You know what I mean? So I began to take just a real look at politics and society and everything that was going on, and kind of reviewing everything, sort of threw everything, all my suppositions out over it, and began taking a look at stuff, and everything sort of shifted. I mean, I wasn't really a dedicated leftist before that. I wasn't too politically active at all, but I was very much politically aware. Ever since I was a kid, I was interested in politics, and I had sort of paid attention throughout it all and had a lot of opinions about it. I came from a very political family. I mean, when I was a kid, I was out marching with Cedar Chavez, and we would have Bobby Kennedy Jr. would be over, and Jane Fonda, and Tom Hayden would come over to the house when we were kids.
So your house. Okay,
yeah,
so you grew up in California?
Yeah, I grew up in a little suburb called Downey.
Oh, okay. I know where Downey is.
LA.
Yeah.
There you go. At the time, it was actually the most white, I think, city in California. I think at this point, it's about 60-40 Hispanic at this point.
So basically what happened is life slapped you upside the head. And when you had to...
Well, yeah, I ended up looking at life in a different way when I had a child. It suddenly, just everything that the world was sort of mattered. And taking a look at it, I sort of realized that all this leftist ideology that I had was just backwards of what the way things should be. And so I changed. It was, I became a very staunch conservative, to the point where when the Iraq War broke out years later, I'm making a hell of a good living as a talent agent in Hollywood. Decided to give all that up to go sort of, film this stuff to tell a story in a more positive light, because I didn't want. So I remember when I was a kid in the Vietnam War, and I remember just all this stuff in the press, all the anti-war stuff, and all this the hating on America stuff that came out, saying we're just these horrible people, and just oppressing these poor people in Vietnam. And I remember even a PBS documentary that was comparing us to the Redcoats, and seeing this stuff as a kid. And I just remember sort of growing up with this sort of sense of shame about the war, and we lost, and all this other sort of stuff. Just all this negative mirage of shit. And I saw this coming again when the Iraq War started. I saw the left teeing it up. I remember the first day when the war broke out in the LA Times, it was the whole giant front page picture of like a female civilian victim in the back of a pickup truck. And I saw the way that this was going again, and I wanted to try to do something to tell the story in a different way than the leftist media, wanted to tell it. So, we've all had this struggle throughout our lives with the media and the way that they lie, and I wanted to do something about it. It makes a big difference. The lies, people don't understand, the lies the media tell have such a vast impact on things.
And yes,
People don't
and they've
realize.
had so for decades. They've had sway over the truth for decades, and they hate that there's pushback finally.
Oh no, it's driving them insane. It's to the point where I think it's even kind of driving them literally insane, where their responses are so, their responses are energetic, but they're weak and ineffective because they're just flailing. They're flailing into just literal, just insanity because they have nowhere to go. You cannot rationally defend yourself when you're a professional liar and you're just constantly telling lies and twisting the truth and maybe tell lies, maybe not so much directly, but you leave out facts and you sort of you sort of emphasize other facts. There's a myriad of tricks that the media uses to get across a point of view that are not even just direct lies. So when you're doing that all the time, and there's no way to defend it. There's just you don't have a winning argument. So all the arguments that you have to come up with they're just gibberish, they're nonsense, and weak and ineffective. And that's the position that the media is in right now.
Well, and coupled with the fact that the media has had its way, they've been up the bunghole of the people for years and years and years. And they're finally starting to reap what they have sown over the numerous decades. I'm sorry, I don't feel shame. Well, I feel great shame for them. I don't feel sorry for them. They're losing.
No, I don't feel sorry for them. You could put a ball in a pit, and I'd probably be the first one to pour gasoline on them and light them on fire.
Yeah.
I don't feel sorry for them at all. These are evil, bad people.
Go
ahead.
Years ago, I worked for KFBK. It's the same radio station that Morton Downey Jr. worked on and that Rush Limbaugh went and became syndicated from. And I met Rush Limbaugh through the station manager at the time. I still had a friend, and I just met him in passing one day. He doesn't have any idea who the hell I am. But I was the media at one time. I was a leftist at one time. I was a Democrat at one time. I worked the George McGovern campaign, for shite's sake. One of the pivotal points that I was talking about was my conversion, baptism, if you will, to conservatism. Ronald Reagan brought me around. But I have to say, Patrick Dollard, one of the reasons that I also admire you, your honesty, your clarity, and you were a documentarian before that was cool. In other words, you precede, if I'm not mistaken, Sebastian Junger and Tim Hetherington, if I'm not mistaken. Restrepo, you were doing that before they were doing that.
Right. I have no idea who those three guys are, so I couldn't comment.
They did a documentary that became relatively it was seen in movie theaters. It was called Restrepo, and it was
that name now sounds familiar. It was about a kid, basically. It was a Iraq War documentary about a kid.
Yes, it was about a number of kids in this terrible valley where they were under fire and being assailed all the time. And one thing that I do have to ask you, quite seriously, you created the documentary Young Americans. And I looked all over the internet and I could not find the answer. Were you ever able to assemble it all together so that it can be...
4 hours. Here's where that is. There were about 4 hours that were, a little bit more 4 hours that have been on the internet.
Okay.
And at one point it was sold. It's an 8-part series to Showtime. Tony Scott was the producer.
Oh, wow.
And, and it was fun, but we started butting heads, and he started to get pretty much erratic. And there was one day where I had gone in, I was cutting one of the episodes, and he asked for like a 20-second change, and it was like short, like about, I did like about a 15 or 10-second change, and he blew up, and he pulled the plug on the whole thing. And it was really odd, and it threw me for a loop. And I didn't know if his brother, because his brother Ridley Scott is obviously a hardcore leftist, was very anti-war. I don't know if he had some influence in this, but it was strange, and it got tied up in litigation with them and Showtime. We're still trying to get it out and free, actually. And then Tony jumped off a bridge. He killed himself.
I was like,
what is this dispute? I was like, is this guy fucking crazy? And then we went into this huge dispute, and the next thing you know, he jumped off a bridge.
Yeah, what the hell was up with that? I was asking myself.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. That's what I said. I had the same reaction to that as I had to months before when he pulled the plug in the documentary. He drove. There was a bridge in San Pedro, which is this major harbor at like South Los Angeles, and there's like the biggest bridge in LA is there in that harbor. And he just drove down there about an hour from his house and climbed up to the top of the bridge. I mean, this is the guy who directed Top Gun, for God's sake.
Yes. Excellent movies.
Exactly. And fucking jumped off the bridge and killed himself. So I don't know what was going on with him, but unfortunately, the documentary just sort of got tied up in that whole sort of period of unraveling. And there you have it.
Do you have any plans, Patrick Dahlad, to do something with it in the future, perhaps?
Well, yes. I actually threw since October, really, of last year, some back channels. I've been trying to work on getting some resolution on this, get the footage free, and then to recut it. It'll be kind of more interesting this way because when it was first being shot, I don't know if it's more interesting, but it'll be interesting in a different way. I'll put it that way. When first being shot, it was a very political angle to all of it. And a lot of stuff was put in there and cut in a way with the politics in mind because I was trying to build support for the war. So in releasing it, I can now reinvent all of this stuff to just tell the story of what it is for young men to be at war, period, without the rubric of the politics and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's no longer so relevant. It's no longer about trying to persuade a public opinion about something. Where I've been putting a lot of thought into this and how to redo it, and I intend to release it as just a study of what it is like for these young men to be at war, as well as at the same time, it's a very no matter how you feel about the war itself and whether or not it should or shouldn't have been started. Once things were at the point that they were, when I was in Fallujah and I was in Ramadi. And the point that was when it was Al-Qaeda, the original ISIS, basically, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They were controlling both of these cities as their capital, and we were in a struggle with them to liberate these cities from their grip. And so what was going on, obviously, was the people in Ramadi and in Fallujah were terrorized by Al-Qaeda, the same way you see them terrorized by ISIS. You know what I mean? With the beheadings and the rapes and just all the madness, all that stuff was going on there. So what the war was at that moment, was a bunch of American kids working into partnership with the civilians in these cities to battle these horrible terrorists.
Patrick Dahlad, it's the top of the hour. I got to take a break. Can you hang on over the break? It'll be about 3 minutes. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Again, thank you, Patrick Dahlad, for being on the air. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back and continue to speak with Patrick Dahlad. Please don't go away.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reverb Common Sense Show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, live and direct from BZ Sierra Nevada Airy in occupied California, doing the job the American media maggots won't, featuring right thinking from a left brain, working without a net and under an assassination order. Here is the bloviating Zeppelin.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, where we have the honor of speaking to Patrick Dollard. And again, good evening to you, sir. Do you mind if I pick your brain?
No, that's fine, but just, don't blame me. You're not doing it on my recommendation, just as long as I'm clear about that. But go ahead.
Do you, sir, have any thoughts about President Donald Trump?
Any thoughts? I've got a million thoughts. I mean,
yeah.
He's doing an amazing job. Originally I was a Ted Cruz guy, and the reasons why I began to shift where I just felt that Trump could be effective in ways that Ted wasn't. You know what I mean? There was the whole question whether Ted could win or not, too. That was part of the problem.
I gotta hug you right now because I was a Ted Cruz guy as well. Ted Cruz pissed me off quite a bit during his time. Yeah. I just hope he learned a few things. But yeah, I was a Ted Cruz guy too.
Yeah, he didn't so much piss me off, and I'm not arguing with you. I mean, I might have just not noticed, but it wasn't. The issue that for me wasn't so much that he pissed me off. It was just I didn't think. I saw the way Trump could manhandle the press.
Yeah.
I saw some weaknesses on Ted's part on immigration. I didn't really know about that.
Right.
And his speeches would be pretty boring sometimes. You know what I mean? The guy, I don't know. I mean, Ted is so together in terms of policy. You know what I mean? In terms of ideology, he's got it. I mean, he's a true conservative. He's got it. But there was just something about where I didn't know that he was going to catch fire to get elected. You know what I'm saying? And once he was elected, I just didn't know if he was going to have that same sort of just fight that Trump has in him. You know what I mean? So that was kind of why I began to shift to Trump. And I think I shifted with as much trepidation as most conservatives did, which is that, well, he's not, doctrinaire conservative. There's only so much he knows, and blah, 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 blah. But that was sort of, that was kind of my journey on it. And now my biggest concern is the thing that I think about most with Trump is really just the whole Reince Priebus issue, you know, whether or not Reince is having too much of a rhino influence on him. You know, that's kind of what my biggest concern is. That's the where I tend to think about it the most at this point right now, actually.
The deal with Donald Trump is I knew why he was created. I understood the creation of Donald Trump. I understood that he was what I call my blog. I exist for pushback because there needs to be pushback on every level imaginable. But once he started rolling, and he did in fact start to roll, the funny thing, I transmogrified, perhaps you did too. The more he was assaulted on every level, the more I came to admire the guy and begin to back him. He was not my guy, but then he became my guy.
Yeah, I mean, was it his fight? Is that what you admired about it?
Yes.
He kept fighting,
Yes.
Or?
And also the other thing was about him was that he became bulletproof. The media would throw shite at him day in and day out, and it bounced off. And that pissed him off to no end. I loved it when the media got pissed off. He called them what they were.
Yeah, he reminds me of, like, I don't know what it was, this a cartoon or something where you shoot at this creature and it only makes the creature bigger. Yeah, I don't know what. There's still some movie, cartoon, or something like that. It was,
exactly.
And that's what he's like. Like, the more you shot at him, the stronger he got. And the reason for that was the more that they shot at him, the more the people that supported him resented them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because most of the attacks were unfair. They were bullshit. You know, he never attacked that guy Kaiser fucking Khan, that Muslim, but that was the whole thing. You know, how dare you attack me? Look, that guy stood up there and attacked Trump. That guy said all this terrible shit about Trump. And then so Trump snapped back at him. And, you know, he did it in a guy's guy way. He hit that, like he made that fucking crack about his wife. Like, oh, was she allowed to be out there? Whatever it was, you know what I mean? He made some crack about Islam. And people thought, oh, that's just the most horrible thing in the world. It's ridiculous. You know, this equation of, like, you make fun of somebody, you poke fun at their religion, and deservedly so. I mean, first of all, you know, it reminds me of, you know, he's making a joke about how women are oppressed in Islam. Okay, so leftists are supposedly these great defenders of women and against all this, you know, oppression of women. And now suddenly leftists, you know, they didn't want to pay any attention to the fact that he was, you know what I mean, that the substance of his commentary was about the oppression of women in this religion, in this society. And, you know, and you look at that whole sort of issue further, and these days the left is all about supporting these women having to wear burqas. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's insane, Patrick. It's insane.
It's insane. They're on a fucking mission to sanctify women being forced to wear burqas. Where they want, you know what I mean? Where they want women wearing veils more now, and all this other sort of shit in public. It's like, wait a minute, these are all symbols of oppression. Why are you now, like, you know, you should want to celebrate an athlete because she has to cover up because men tell her to?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, there's like, make a big deal, these Olympic fucking athletes, like, wearing these, like, semi-burqas or whatever the fuck they wear. And I'm like, well, wait a minute here. You know, but it's because it's all because, you know, it's insane, but it's not. All this stuff goes back to the same thing, which is the war on white Christian society in America. That's why they're willing to, like, put up with the fucking oppression of women issue, because they need support bringing more and more Muslims here to help make the whites, the European American Christians, a minority. You see what I mean? So that's why it's insane that they're doing it. But when you look at the big picture in the context of why, it makes perfect sense. If what you're about is bringing a bunch of people over here in an endless stream who are hostile to white Christians, who are going to set up their own sort of like cells. And what I mean by cells, I don't mean like terrorist cells, but that's what their communities are. The Muslims, they go in and they take over a bunch of space. You know what I mean? These spaces become no-go zones.
Dearborn and Hamtramck. Dearborn and Hamtramck in Michigan are two perfect examples of that.
Exactly. Just like they have in Europe, they have them there now. So when your mission is to bring all that here all that anti-white Christian stuff here, if you have to, if supporting the oppression of women, you have to do that to get at the white Christians, then that's what you do. So that's why they support it. That's why it all seems so backwards. That's what it's all about.
It is insane. It's insanity writ large. You are exactly right, Patrick Dollard. It is a symbol of repression. Women who support Islam are the first persons who would be repressed. There is a reason for FGM, female genital mutilation. It is a form of oppression. Honor killings, walking behind men. Women, please, listen up. Become educated about Islam. Read the Quran. I did. Read the Hadith. I did. That's one of the reasons that I'm educated about Islam.
Yeah, and they'll start supporting. Look, they're supporting the burqa now. They will begin to support the female genital mutilation, the honor kit, all of it. They will support whatever they have to support to move ahead their fucking genocidal anti-white war.
Well, the funny thing is, we have what I call historical Alzheimer's. We can't fucking look across the Atlantic and see what is currently occurring in Europe right now. I have a question for you, Patrick Dollard. Did you recently happen to see what occurred with Marine Le Pen, who is roughly the conservative advocate that's going to be...
She wouldn't take off her... she wouldn't put on a scarf for that mufti.
Yes, exactly.
Grand mufti of Lebanon.
She refused to wear... Yes! That should be a universal female response to the insistence of sublimation. That's what women should do.
Exactly right. Is that exactly right? Well, look, the left is never about supporting what they claim they're supporting. Those are all this stuff. It's just cover stories. They're cover stories for an evil agenda. We're just helping kids. We're just helping women. We're just helping minorities. It's all the same race war agenda. That's what it's all about. So that's why it's all crap. That's why now the whole worrying about women and their rights, conservative Islam, gets washed to the side. Because they were never really worried about women's rights in the first place. All they were worried about was destroying the family, disempowering the person, the archetype of what American society was structured at, which is the white male. So you disempower him, you make his woman rebel against him, you make his children rebel against him. You're tearing down this society, this white Christian society. So all that backing of women was never about backing women. It was about attacking the patriarchy. That's what it was about. And it's just the same thing. They don't care about the minorities. They're so worried about life, which you can't fucking, you can't kill a pig to eat it to make bacon because you're hurting an animal, but at the same time, they'll want to assassinate Trump. They'll want to support every abortion under the sun. And so it just shows you they don't care about the things they claim to care about.
Exactly.
It's all a bunch of BS. They create these victims so that they can use them for an attack on the white Christians.
Here's the other odd thing that I discovered. There was the leader of the organizer of the Women's March that occurred about a month ago in Washington is a female named Linda Sarsour. She was the principal organizer for the Women's March.
Bomber. She's a terrorist bomber. She spent 10 years in jail. 10 fucking years in jail for being part of a terrorist bombing.
And again,
she's the leader of the Women's March.
Yes, and again, Patrick Dollard, is that not insanity writ large? Yeah. That these stupid people are embracing an individual like that and don't seem to have a care as to what she represents, what she's been, who she is, and what she's done.
Yeah, no, they don't. And they don't in and of itself because they have no morals. They don't care. They're just about chasing power. So she's a convenient lever to power. And they also don't care in a public relations sense, as they should, and as they are somewhat starting to because of this backlash. But they don't care about. In other words, they don't care about that being exposed. You would think that they would. You would think that they don't want this publicity of this woman being like this. But they've learned not to care because they've become very reckless about their crimes and their malignant beliefs and these things that they do because the media they've had control of the media. So the media would suppress things like that. You know what I mean? Before the internet or anything else, there would be no way to find this out about this woman. And even still, you and I are talking about this now, and you and I have read about this on the internet, but it was never broadcast, you know what I mean, in any mainstream media outlet. We never published or broadcast that this woman was leading the Women's March is a terrorist. So it's still that way. So they're very reckless about this stuff because they're not used to it being reported and exposed. And still, even if it is reported and exposed, it's not reported and exposed in a large venue. You're not going to see it on ABC News, etc.
Well,
it's catching up with them. A lot of the stuff that they pulled on Trump, or just a lot of the ways that they've been, like with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, just sort of all these sort of evil and odious things the left has been engaged in, that the media has been either not reporting or reporting in a way to make these bad things look good. People, because of alternative news sources, people have been, and just because of common sense, people have been looking at a lot of these horrible things that the left has been doing, and it's turned them off. And it's made them rebel against the left. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where before the left could have an ironclad control of what we thought about this shit. Because the media, they're sort of losing that. And Americans are now, they understand the game. They know when the media is lying. They see all this stuff that they're being told is good, like Black Lives Matter burning shit in the streets, Colin Kaepernick, refusing to stand up for the anthem, the psychological torture of white school children in all these public schools now, telling these kids that they have white privilege and they don't deserve their success, and, and that they're bad people and all that.
And
sort
exclusion,
of stuff.
specific exclusion of Caucasoids, as I call them. The kids can't come to these various marches. White women were not accepted. Conservative white women, they were shooed with regards to the Women's March. We don't want you. Stay the hell away.
Right. Well, people are seeing this now, and they're turned off by it. The media does their best to try to sell it. The media's out there every day trying to say white privilege is real and this and that. These parents are having their kids are coming home. They're being told that they're pieces of shit because they're born white. People are seeing this stuff, and and the backlash against the left is occurring. But because they've gotten away with it for so long, they're just very reckless about it. It's still, and that's why things like this terrorist woman gets to, head a women's march. Another reason why they do these stupid things, why you find terrorists leading women's marches, is because that's who the left is. You know what I mean? The talent pool of activists that they have to draw on are not good, wholesome people. They're all going to be tied up in scumbaggery at some point in their life somewhere.
Well, Patrick Dahlett, I have to ask you a question then, because it's no secret where you lie in terms of your politics. Could you, knowing as what people know about you, could you even go back to Hollywood and attempt to put together deals anymore?
No, I mean, I'm not really interested. I mean, there are a couple projects maybe, but it's not where my passion lies. Things move too slow. It's a movie business. I'm more interested in trying to affect some societal change, political change, and to just, tie up the amount of time of years that it takes to just get one movie made or whatever. And that kind of is not of interest to me. But no, I don't want to.
No, the leftists, there's only two things, in my opinion, that leftists have anymore. Three things: navel gazing, sex,
right,
and race. That's all they care about.
Right. Pretty much.
There's so much more to life than that.
Yeah, no, I know. Look, it all boils down to race with them. That's why they're so pissed. They thought it was done. They thought that Barack had teed it all up. Had advanced the ball to the 60, 60, 70-yard line, or 40 or 30-yard line, and fucking Hillary was going to get it across. There would no longer be a white majority in the country. We would have open borders, all this sort of stuff. It was done. It was like the victim was on the ground, the knife was at his neck.
Yes.
And all Hillary had to do was plunge the knife in. It didn't happen. And that's why they're out of their minds.
And they are
not just like, they are.
They are out of their minds.
They are out of their minds because they thought it was over. They thought it was done. That the grand goal of reestablishing control of this country and taking it out of the hands of white Christians, they thought it was done. And she just had to get it across the final yards. And so now, because the big main goal has been taken away, that's why they're so pissed off. That's why they're so furious.
Yes,
They thought it was where are the attacks from the impeachment coming from? Where are the most vociferous attacks come from? They come from the Congressional Black Caucus. It's a race-related issue.
They thought it was a fait accompli, that it was going to be Hillary, one of the worst candidate in recorded history. But I have to ask you one very important, larger, overarching question about this. Now we have Trump. Now it seems that sanity is beginning to return to D.C. But I think, in my opinion, the largest question is, Pat, where do you think the hell we go from here? Will he stay? Is this movement going to continue?
Yeah, it is going to continue because we have too much to fix. So much of what has been done has to be reversed. The press still has to be crushed and reconstructed.
Crushed.
Yes. They do. It all has to be. We're in a long fucking war here. We're in a war for control of this country. And our side is going to win, and our side is going to control it. And it's a long battle. I mean, Trump is really, to a large degree, just the start here. I mean, we're a long way from over. We have to, look, in 1965, the immigration laws were changed.
Yes.
The long story, I can tell you who did it and why and what it's all about. It's not even really Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was just a face on it. But they were changed specifically to basically terminate, to come as close to terminating fully as possible immigration from Europe, from white Christians from Europe.
Yes, the nation's changed.
Yes, the goal of the 65 immigration law was to stop white immigration from Europe and make almost all immigration to the U.S. come from third world countries. So that can't stand. That is one of the biggest problems that we have. That law has to be reversed. The standards were originally set in 1924. Special interest groups, we're not going to get into right now, led a big push for 40 years to get it changed. It got some traction with John Kennedy, and then it sort of all exploded from there. And next thing we knew, we have this law. I watched the guy. His name is Norbert Schley, who actually wrote the law. And it's a video interview of him years later. And this guy is making the claim, he said, when we wrote this law, we had no idea. We told everybody that it wasn't going to change the demographic makeup of this country, and we had no idea that it would. And he's trying to hold this. He just can't control himself, and he starts laughing. He starts laughing because what he's saying is so absurd. I think it's one of the most evil things I've ever seen in my life.
Can you give me the name of that guy again?
Yeah, Norbert Schley. I can DM you on Twitter. I'll give you a link to the video, too.
Okay. All right. I'd love it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. He laughs. It's unbelievable because he's trying to say with a straight face that he had no idea that it was going to change the country from white to brown. And he busts out laughing. This guy, how he ended his life, okay, being he was convicted for selling fraudulent Chinese bonds. That was $250 billion worth, some crazy figure like that. All right, so that's what he is. He's a fraudster. Okay, it was like it was a perfect thing. I'm thinking of this guy saying that this was not to change the country, demographically. It did, and then what's he then next most famous for? Being busted for being one of the biggest fraudsters in American history. With this complete bonds, selling fake fucking bonds. It was unbelievable. So
another Bernie Madoff.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. It makes it's people walk around. We go out now and we see there's just all these people from basically the third world, and Mexico included, and we see all these changes everywhere. And people say to themselves, "Well, I guess I got to stop fighting this. This is natural. This is the way of the world. This is natural change." It's not natural change. That's what Americans don't understand.
Well, ask Europe.
People don't understand how well we've been. Well, it's not a natural change because the laws were written specifically to make it happen that way. Okay? So you're supposed to be going to the mall or out in the world and seeing people who look like you. That's the way things would be going if immigration was natural to this country. But the laws were written in such a way as to make things the unnatural occur. all of them, whether it's gay marriage, whether it's all this third world immigration, none of it is natural change. That's the greatest lie. It's all the result of this like diabolical Frankenstein mad scientist kind of change. We don't have to adapt to the world as it has become. That's the greatest lie ever told, because the world as it has become this way due to diabolical engineering. It's not natural. If you reverse all that, this country would be 180-degree difference from what it is.
Well, the only thing that I can hope is that the engine of change is in fact here. I'll be the first to admit that Trump can be wacky at times, but here's what I think I've finally discerned and sussed out. You tell me if you think I'm correct. I have to go by what Donald Trump does, not necessarily by what he says. He's a doer. He can outwork any arsehole in D.C. Of that, I'm assured. Yeah. He's up at 0:30 and doesn't go to bed until 0:30. And I hope he whips everyone in his cabinet and in his staff like dirty dogs every day. Yeah. I can only hope that he does. Well, hell, look at all the things that he's already accomplished in his first few weeks.
Now,
all I can say is
the reason why more hasn't been accomplished
is because of the Democrats.
Congress.
Yes,
right, because of Paul Ryan, and they're dragging. Congress is dragging its feet. He's done everything. They've done nothing so far. They keep talking a good game. Paul Ryan keeps showing up on Hannity saying, "Oh, we're going to start, writing all these bills left, right, and center." But I'm not seeing it yet.
No, that's your point, and that's my point. Paul Ryan says, Trump does. That's the massive, massive difference between the two.
It really is. It really is. Look, and I'll tell you right now, the hold up on Obamacare, it's very simple. Republicans are afraid that if they take away the pre-existing conditions exemption,
right,
that they're going to lose a bunch of votes in 2018. The Republicans, they're not making their decision based on what's good for America.
No.
They're making a decision based on what they think is good for the party in the next election cycle.
Right. And can I get my arse back in that seat, in that office again?
Well, right, exactly. So instead of doing what they should do, which is repealing Obamacare and replacing it with nothing, the only thing Obamacare should replace with is a true free market. All right, and so there should be one change to the way things were before, which is that insurance companies should be allowed to sell across state lines. That's the only difference, okay? But they don't want to do that because they're afraid that because people have been given this pre-existing exemptions, fucking thing, that you can't take it away from them now. And I'm not speculating here because I watched this start. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. It was on a Saturday afternoon. It was Rand Paul went to one city, and another major congressperson, it was a woman actually, went to another city. And it was a senator. I think it was probably 2 senators. And they both made these statements about how once you give something to people, you can't take it away. They're both about Obamacare. You can't take it away. So a light bulb went off in my head. So, okay, both these people on the same day flew to 2 different cities to give the same speech about how you can't take away existing pre-existing exemptions anymore. And I realized that was now the GOP party line. Okay, so that's what this is all about. They're afraid that they will suffer, that you cannot take the pre-existing exemptions away. And that's the only problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because you can't keep it either. You cannot keep it and have it, A, have it still be insurance, and B, not have the insurance companies go broke. It's not insurance anymore, where if I get cancer, I go get insurance because I found out that I have cancer. They can't say no. I pay 4 months worth of premiums of $400 each, while they pay $40,000 for my cancer treatment, and then I cancel it because I don't need it anymore. That's not insurance. You know what I mean? You can't crash your car and then call the insurance company and say, I'm going to give you $80 for 1 month's policy, and you're going to pay $3,000 for this accident.
Right, exactly.
How is it going to work? And, well, that's why they can't write a replacement, because they can't figure out how to fucking pay for it. It's a joke. It's no one once. That's what nobody understands. Once you take away the pre-existing exemption, it is government insurance, period. Because the only way you're going to pay for it is if the government makes it up for them, which is the taxpayers. So it's government insurance. So it becomes this self-fulfilling doom where, You know what I mean? So they're going to have to get over it. They have to be real with the American people and say, there's not going to be any pre-existing objections, and you can all just go buy your policies, and they'll be a lot cheaper because they cost straight lines. But if you want to get medical help, you're going to have to go get fucking insurance and not wait until you get sick and then have the government pay for it for you.
Right. That's grossly unfair to the taxpayer. Patrick Dollard, I am late for the break at the bottom of the hour. I'm gonna break for that right now. My invitation is to you. You are welcome to stay for the break and come back, or if you have to leave, I perfectly understand that as well.
I do have to go just because I have a commitment to somebody. I'm now a little bit late myself. So,
Got it.
But I will look, maybe another time. I'll come back on.
I'll tell you what. Number one, yes, I would love you to come back. That would be absolutely wonderful. Number two, thank you ever so kindly for your time here today. God bless you, sir. Thank you for your opinions, and thank you for being the two things that I value in any individual, honest and clear. Thank you kindly,
Thanks, sir.
Patrick
Appreciate it.
Dollard.
It's all my pleasure.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care, man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Patrick Dollard, and it was a grand interview, I think. I'll be back in just a few minutes. I am, in fact, late for the break. I hope Sackhead Sean and Sackheads Clint don't kill me. But so, let's take the break, then let's come back pretty please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying capitalist, stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver Common Sense Show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you for listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I thank you for being here. Thank you for being in chat. I haven't been able to interact that much with chat because I was busy listening to Patrick Dahlett. That was a really interesting interview. And the nice thing is he said that he's willing to come back. And I didn't get to a fraction of the questions that I had for Mr. Dahlett. Like I said, he has, if there's anybody that's led an eclectic life, it would be Patrick Dahlett, to say the least. An interesting point, and I would like to ask him the next time that he's here. He had to beg off. I had to beg off a couple of times because, one, I was sick. And then he begged off one time because he was going to a meeting with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And I had forgotten, damn it, that was a question that I was going to ask is, did he have any particular discussion with Sheriff Arpaio? Which is very interesting because for the first time ever in quite some time, at least maybe 15 years, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who is in his 80s, for God's sake, is no longer sheriff in Maricopa County. Instead, there's another individual who is one of these sanctuary city-loving law enforcement officers leaning left, because, of course, they pervade every level of society now, even copdom. Copdom in law enforcement now is starting to move left. I hate to say it, but it's true. They're afraid. They, if it's not politically correct, chiefs of police who are appointed at the whim of city government, city managers, or the mayors, they have to keep the gobs quiet. They have to keep them shut. They cannot say what needs to be said. Joe Arpaio did. He let us know exactly what he thought. He saved money, much money, for the residents of Maricopa County in Arizona. And for that reason, I would be very curious as to what kind of discussion occurred between Patrick Dahlett and ex-Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who is a great guy and had all sorts of great ideas. Pink underwear and open-air tents in the Arizona sun for people who have been sentenced in the county of Maricopa. Wowza, what a wonderful, interesting, very interesting kind of thing. Here's an article. This is interesting. Eric Holder, who was hired by the state of California to represent the state of California when Donald Trump begins to focus his ugly, steely eyes on the state of California. Eric Holder has been hired by the state of California to defend the state of California when Trump focuses on the sanctuary and illegal immigrant issue, because California is not shy in terms of saying we are not just a sanctuary city, like San Francisco, like Los Angeles. We are a sanctuary state. So Eric Holder and his law team are providing his services to the state of California. Now there's an article out from Eric Holder saying, and you knew this was coming. Come on, get serious, get happy. Eric Holder says Obama is ready to roll. Barack Obama. This is from Politico, by the way. Barack Obama is getting closer to making his public reappearance in politics. Oh, joyous day! His friend and former Attorney General Eric Holder said on Tuesday. Holder said he's been talking to the former president about ways, including fundraising and interacting with state legislatures, that could help the new National Democrat Redistricting Committee, which Obama asked Holder to chair last year. It's coming. He's coming, Holder said. The he! Huzzah, huzzah! Obama, he's coming! He said, Holder said, speaking to reporters at a briefing for the new group, and he's ready to roll. Throughout, Holder said, Obama will be a more visible part of the effort. Holder also predicted that the usual pattern of the party in the White House losing state legislative seats in off-year elections would hold next year. But I expect we'll see that on steroids with President Trump. The NDRC is looking to be an intensified central force for Democrats to tackle their disadvantage in gerrymandering. Oh, no! Oh, you mean the GOP was more effective at gerrymandering areas than the Democrats, who have historically held sway on that for years and years and years? Oh, my God, you mean there's competition now? Oh, I swoon, with hand to forehead. The mission is to direct resources into winning targeted state elections, push ballot initiatives for nonpartisan district drawing commissions, and wage legal challenges to existing maps. Very interesting. Oh, and here's something also equally interesting about the state of California. The state of California has now determined that what it wants is single-payer insurance. They want to go around completely Donald Trump. They want to go around Obamacare. I guess they want to be like, let's see, where was that? Connecticut? Someplace back east. There was a particular state where they had their own medical care when Mitt Romney, the lovely Mitt Romney, was there. Massachusetts. Was it Massachusetts? I forget, and I don't have the ability to look on the internet for that right now. So anyway, California wants single payer. Very interesting. But I was thinking that the DNC was in fact going to go off the deep end. I thought for sure the Democrat National Committee, because they just recently held their elections this past weekend, I think it was Saturday, I was hoping beyond hope. Fingers crossed, eyes crossed, testicles crossed, anything that can be crossed, that it was going to be Keith Ellison who was going to be the DNC chair. Imagine my disappointment. They almost went off the deep end, but not quite. So instead of electing Keith Ellison as DNC chair, which, like I say, I just so hoped, the DNC punted, and what they did is they elected Tom Perez as DNC chair. But, they didn't exactly entirely puss out, because Keith Ellison is assistant chair. So, knowing that, if I were Tom Perez, I'd be on my highest alert for people giving me things that would cause pseudo heart attacks. I'd check all my lug nuts on all my vehicles, because I'm sure Keith Ellison does in fact have aspirations. I hope your insurance is paid up, Tom Perez. You better check your life. From the Washington Post, Thomas Perez elected the first Latino leader of Democrat Party. And there you have it. Isn't that what I said about the Democrats? It's all about race and sex. Sex and race and sex. For those of you who just tuned in, race and sex. So the Washington Post writes it, he's the first Latino leader of the Democrat Party. Former Labor Secretary Thomas Perez, former Labor Secretary under Barack Obama, I should say. Thomas Perez was elected the first Latino chair of the Democrat National Committee on Saturday, narrowly defeating Representative Keith Ellison of Minnesota at the end of a contentious battle over the fate of the beleaguered party in the age of Donald Trump. Perez's victory concluded the first contested race for the DNC leadership since 1985, a contest the party had extended by a month to allow more debate. It put in place a Democrat leadership that will navigate thousands of state and local elections where the party hopes to reverse the losses of the past 6 years, and a 2020 presidential race that could divide the party again. To those listening live, to those listening in chat, to those listening in the podcast later, do you think Hillary Clinton is coming back? Do you think that could be possible? All right, well, let's get to the good stuff, Washington Post, shall we? Ellison's defeat was a blow to the party's liberal wing personified by activists, labor leaders, and organizers, many of whom had supported the presidential bid of Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont and had come to Atlanta to cheer Ellison on. Ellison, a Muslim. Ellison, a supporter of CARE, who is in fact a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, who is a terrorist gang. Of course, the Democrats would never admit that. And they refute it completely. Many of them warned that by picking Perez, the party was alienating the growing resistance that has organized against Trump. See, didn't I say that? Didn't I say that all along? Ellison needed to be elected DNC chair so that he could right the wrongs of 1,000 years. The race was close enough that it required a second round of balloting, with Perez winning 235 of 435 votes cast. With tension still high as the result was announced, 9 Ellison supporters chanted, "Party for the people, not big money," and stormed out of the room. Do you think that President Trump had a tweet after that? I think you'd be well served if you said, "Gosh, I bet he did." And it was this. He wrote, "I could not be happier for him or for the Republican Party." Yeah, isn't that amazing? I am, however, quite sad insofar as, though the DNC went a little left, it didn't go as hard a port as I had so absolutely fervently wished. We knew the Democrats believed that they had to double down on whatever strategy didn't work because, after all, the New York Times said so. I swear to God, this is an actual article from the New York Times. I may have read this over the my last show in the aftermath, but my God, it's so appropriate now and it bears repeating. From the New York Times by a guy named Steve Phillips, it says, "Move left, Democrats." Move left. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, all right. Enough editorializing. Here's the article. The Democratic National Committee will choose its next leader on Saturday. Well, they already did. And when it does, it should choose a leader who will resist the pressure to pursue the wrong white people. Correct. The wrong white people. Hundreds of articles have been written about the imperative of attracting more support from white working-class voters who supported Barack Obama in 2012 but then bolted to back Donald J. Trump. You betrayers. You horrible caucasoid betrayers. Damn you. The wrong white people. So, okay, so then there are proper white people? What does this tell you about the Democrats? That's this. As I said, again, because it's so true. They see everything only in 2 factors. Race and sex. Because that's all they have. The far more important, the article continues, and largely untold story of the election is that more Obama voters defected to third and fourth party candidates than the number who supported Mr. Trump. That is the white flight that should most concern the next DNC chairman, because those voters make up a more promising way to reclaim the White House. The way to win them back is by being more progressive, not less. Right. That's what the person who got his arse kicked out of the coal industry because Barack Hussein Obama said that he was going to destroy coal. Oh, you can have a coal plant, but I'm going to ruin you from taxes and regulations, which he did. And so the people that were working in coal mines back east in Virginia, etc., and they no longer can feed their families and put food on the table and buy shoes for the kidlings. And that's just one point. That's just one aspect. So, that's what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that myself? What a great play. Doubling down on what didn't work. And doubling down on what didn't win. Instead of a little bit of self-examination, they make the play for it's everybody's fault but ours. The article continues, whoever prevails as chairman must resist the pressure to follow on an uninformed and ill-fated quest for winning over conservative white working-class voters in the Midwest. Did you hear what he just said? What he said was, Caucasoids living in flyover states, unless you're living in major urban rat heaps, you don't mean shite. You can all go to hell. You don't mean anything. You're not worthy. You're not worthwhile. And by the way, we don't even fucking want you. That'll win over people. Yeah. The solution for Democrats is not to chase Trump defectors. The path to victory involves re-inspiring those whites who drifted to third-party candidates and then focusing on the ample opportunities in the Southwest and the South. Yeah, like I said, those Caucasoid working-class morons in the Midwest, all of you flyover state fucktards, you don't mean shite. The only Caucasoids who mean anything at all can be found in the northeastern newsrooms, D.C. enclaves, as well as, like I said, left coast cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portlandia, Sacramento, the belly of the beast. Let's remember, okay, after all, that American blacks, a massive Democrat base, they don't know how to vote. They don't even have the first clue as to how to get ID. That's so oppressive on its face. So, why don't the Democrats ask a basic fundamental question? What is going to be, what was Barack Hussein Obama's legacy, upon which the Democrats feel so incredibly compelled to double down upon? His legacy is this, that of division on every political and social level imaginable. Sam Stein, a guy that writes for Huffington Post, said that Obama leaves his party in a much worse position. The states are decimated. He lost control of the House and the Senate. The governorships are decimated. All factually correct. Absolutely factually correct. Here's his legacy. Under Obama, the American voter has consistently rejected the stance of the Democrats, including Obama himself. For the past 8 years, 2008 to 2016, they lost 63 seats in the House, 10 seats in the Senate. Republicans from 2008 to 2016 gained 900 plus seats in state legislatures, along with 12 governorships across the U.S., meaning that 2/3 now of the governors in the nation are now Republicans. That's his legacy. Obama's entire agenda was, it revolved, and the Democrats want to continue to do this, which is why I say it's insanity writ large. They striate people by class, sex, race, religion, earnings, region, state, city, county, clothing, music, laws, wages, healthcare, culture, employment, family, mode of transport, energy consumption, food, cable channels watched, media consumed, social settings, the way you view America, even your writings, your statements, and your thoughts. Good damn times. Wonderful. The DNC semi-dodged a bullet. So, you know what, Tom Perez, again, I say, you know, if one day all of a sudden you just have sort of the magic heart attack and fall face down in your soup, or you're going around a corner in your personal $80,000 sports car purchased at taxpayer expense, and your wheel happens to fall off and you go straight into a bridge abutment, That makes Keith Ellison the new DNC chair. Wowza! Wouldn't that be convenient? Amazing.
Monsieur! It's unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this was a great show. I had a great time. Thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Ballroom on the SHR Media Network, and thanks to Patrick Dollard for coming on today in this interview. If you want to contact me, you'll find me on Twitter at bzepp and on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. My original music intro at the beginning of the show is by Possessed Tranquility at reverbnation.com. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Tiaras and Pink Color by My Little Pony. And thanks, in less than an hour, to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team. Tune in to the Sackheads radio show tomorrow night, the best in late night talk, except for me. Don't tell them I said that. And I'll be on there tomorrow, and we'll be back. So, we will meet again. Oh, we're going to meet again on Thursday, and I bet I will actually have time to talk about Sweden on Thursday, in the aftermath. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you on the podcast. Please come back.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night and good luck.